every day for about an hour, sit in a dark room on a chair in quiet and visualize yourself doing everything perfectly. You're no injury, no nothing. You're not going to get injured. Just doing everything perfectly. All your shots, everything. It was like a month later, and boom, he was right back to where he was, and even better. You see those guys who are like built, muscle bound and everything like that, but they're still like meatheads, and they have like no respect at all, you know, not respectable. But yeah,
because they're missing the other combinations, the other ingredients.
Yeah, in my opinion, like, yeah, exactly. And when you have all those other ingredients, there's like a realm where you can feel. I mean, you know people, I'm sure, that when you're around them, like when you meet them, you already know, oh crap, there's something about this person. And when you have all those things in place, that's what happens.
So that can happen even with your significant other.
Yeah.
Like, you both can be walking somewhere and someone's probably more weaponized than you. Our eyes.
Totally. Yep.
But if you can be more weaponized and keep her attention.
Yep. Yeah. Or, and on top of that, you become, like, especially for guys, like, I notice it happen all the time, like going on date nights or whatever, and other women looking at you. Your significant other knows that, and a lot of guys would be like, oh no, oh, like scared of that happening, and you're gonna get shit for it for sure. But it's one of the best things that could happen, you know? Yeah, like, because you see, it's the same. It's that same thing. It's like a good gauge. One, it builds attraction from your significant other, your woman, big time, just the way it is. But the other one that you said, like, both are gauges. Both are things like if you go out and you feel like nobody is like she's not worried at all that you can't get anybody else, then that's a gauge of where you're at. The other is if she's looking elsewhere, like, oh, that guy, that's another gauge of where you're at too, for sure.
Another gauge is when you come home and how you're being welcomed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
There's so many ingredients that go into becoming a man, being a man.
It's hard, man. It's not just looking good.
Right.
It's like you're constantly having to have all these different things in place. Money, the providence, but then at the same time, like, having the balls to say no. Like, you can't buy that because of this or whatever. Not because I don't have the money to do it, but because I want to use this for investments, or now, yeah, you can buy this. And like, there's so many different things. The other thing was being able to fight. That's another thing. Like, with I think that just the bodybuilding alone type thing. Gosh, there's so much. It's so funny. Like, it's cool that we're talking about this type of stuff though, because there's social dynamics, like being social. There's being able to be present, which is another being thing. You know, one of my, I'll share what my buddy David Zariadis, he's like best-selling author. He smacked me upside the head figuratively one day, and I'll share that with you in just a second. But yeah, just being able to things like being able to fight too. When that one gentleman came up, notice how both of you and I, like, literally didn't eat. Like, it was just kind of like not phased at all. Prior to jiu-jitsu, prior to being fit, all that other stuff, I would have been nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure anybody else here that was in that same position would be like, who the frick is this guy? Like, oh, what do you want? Oh yeah, okay. But both you and I, like literally, it was like you and I both took control of even the conversation. He's obviously a little loony, but took control of the situation, the conversation, just, you know, and you can feel and everybody around, women, men, can feel your energy when it comes to situations like that. So even that like calmness of not being this like prey animal, constantly, you know. So since it wasn't on camera, I don't think it was on camera. Just for anybody watching, you know, a guy comes in and it says some crazy thing. Yeah, crowds your space. Like he was literally like right up on me, right? Crowds my space, and then says some nutty thing or whatever, and it wasn't like, oh crap, like what? It was just, I don't even remember what I said, but it was more of just like, oh yeah, I always do that to you. Like he's like, oh, you hustling me, man, or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, I always hustle you. And he's like, oh, you do? All right, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. What's your name? And I said, what's your name? And then he said Slavic, and you're like, oh, you're Russian? And then it was like, okay, cool. Well, it was great to meet you. End of conversation. Go off. Go bye. Bye. That wouldn't come without the ability to fight and to know that if anything were to happen, he's going to be choked out on the ground, you know. Yeah, there's so much involved in being like a really high value man like that, you know. So my buddy Damon Zariadis, I would do this all the time. So they would come in, and this one, that person would be over there. So he'd walk over here, and I'd be like, and we'd have a conversation. I'd just literally be just all over the place, like, oh. He looks at me, and we had been friends for like a few months. He looks at me and he's like, he essentially basically says, you know, if we're gonna talk, you need to be present. He's like, I noticed that you can't hold a conversation without looking elsewhere. And he is dead eye all the time. Just like, if there's anything going on, nothing except for you. And I got so embarrassed, but I was like, you know what? You know, you're right. I have this nasty habit of looking there, looking at that person here, people walking up or whatever. And it was at that moment that I started practicing like eye contact all the time, like talking and really being present. And even with something like that type of ability is just one of those other things that you have to learn. Like literally, there's so many things that if you're able to do and keep up with all of these different things, you have opportunities pop up all the time. Like you and I, we work together because, you know, you had a certain high value, right? I'm not going to go work with people who are. I'm not going to work with people who I don't feel are like either on my level or going to be on my level. You know, I might take a risk, but we've been working for months now, and I've just seen you go up and up and up in all different areas. You know, because I need that. I need guys like you. Because then you're gonna kick me. You're kicking me in the ass to go to the gym and record there. Like that's one of the things for me that makes me like extremely nervous to go, because I'm like, well, what workouts am I gonna do, and why am I gonna even do this? Like, what's the point, you know? All of these different things, you know. So there's so much that even just in things like that you challenged me on that helped me to break out of my comfort zones and shells and stuff like that, you know. So
Yeah, I noticed in the very beginning, you started going out in public, you started having those shifty eyes. But you've progressively gotten better.
I visualize and practice. Like every single time that we would be together, I would practice, and it was hard. Like sometimes I see people coming in over here. The guy who was kind of shady with the skateboard and stuff like that. I don't like if he goes behind me, trying to be aware where he's at, you know. So like it's practice and then visualization. I always visualize. Do you visualize a lot?
All the time.
Yeah. It's such a huge, especially with like jujitsu. Like if I learn a new move or something like that, that's the way I practice at home, is through visualization.
There's one thing I learned about visualization, which was not to visualize seeing yourself, but being yourself.
Yeah, totally.
There's a big difference because now you become it.
Yeah.
Instead of like third person.
Yep.
Second.
Yep.
Have you been there?
Yep. Yeah, because your brain doesn't know the difference. The subconscious is like, oh, yeah, we do that all the time. Like as you do, if you are like feeling, smelling, tasting, like everything, your brain doesn't know the difference at all.
Someone told me for a world championship jiu-jitsu, I was visualizing seeing myself on the podium. I was in the stands and I was watching myself. I was like, I'm going to be there. And then someone told me, like, no, you are there, but you visualize yourself
standing, looking out. Yep.
Not being in the crowd looking at you.
Yep.
And just that shift is just huge. It just helped me grow confidence and trust in my game and go out there and leave it all. You know, like I was familiar with standing on the podium, and I ended up standing on the podium. I might have saw myself on the third place podium, and I should have imagined myself on the first place. But you know, I was still standing on the podium. So.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's good. Like it's cool. Like I love the stuff that we're talking about because this is all stuff that I've used to be successful. Like, there's a really amazing book that is, I think, probably the Godfather book of, at least one of them, of visualizing. And I've used it. I literally have used it to get my business to Inc. 5000 status, right? So the book is called Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's by a guy. It's an old book, not old, 1980s. So was that 40 years ago now? Oh, it's crazy. So in Psycho-Cybernetics, a guy named Maxwell Maltz, I believe is his name. He was a plastic surgeon, and he was one of the best plastic surgeons out there, and he could make you look amazing. But what he found over time is that pretty much not everyone, but a lot of his clients, even though they were beautiful, they would still act as if they were ugly, or they would still act as if they had that issue, or they would still go into a depression because of they think that they look a certain way. And he was like, why is this happening? Why is it that we can completely change the person physically to look like a gorgeous celebrity, yet they feel like they're an ugly duckling, right? And what he found, he started from what I remember, he started delving into more psychology type stuff. And what he found was that the problem was called, what he called the snapback effect. It's like a rubber band. If you stretch out a rubber band, boom, it's going to snap back as soon as you let it. As soon as you let even a little bit go, it's just going to snap back. A snap back of your identity, of who you think you are. And the way around that is what he calls psycho-cybernetics. It's basically you're doing this visualization, what he calls the theater of your mind. He gives an example of this hockey player who he was world-class hockey player, was best of the best, and then all of a sudden he got injured playing hockey, got fully healed, but then he started sucking afterward. He just could not be who he was before. And so he was working with Dr. Maltz, and what it ended up being was as he's playing, he kept on thinking that he was going to get injured. And so he would hesitate in places where he wouldn't do it. And so what Dr. Maltz had him do was every day for about an hour, sit in a dark room on a chair in quiet and visualize yourself doing everything perfectly. You're no injury, no nothing. You're not going to get injured. Just doing everything perfectly. All your shots, everything. It was like a month later, and boom, he was right back to where he was, and even better. Because his brain was saying, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, we're good. We're not going to get injured. We've been doing this for a month already, and it's been amazing. Everything's perfect. Like his shots were like dead on, like all the time, because his brain was like, yeah, we make shots like that all the time. Like it's not because he's literally just like you saying he is not looking at himself doing it. He is himself doing it. And so for me, I used it for public speaking, like being in front of an audience, giving my speech, being animated, them clapping afterward, feeling everything from the shaking of the hand of the person prior to me coming up, giving my presentation, clicking on the clicker, looking at the PowerPoint slides, all that jazz. I visualize that every day. I also visualize myself going to my office on my little dirt road to my little mobile office, up the stairs, hearing the clank and feeling the clank of the metal stairs, grabbing my door, you know where the office is, grabbing my door, opening it up, feeling the difference in temperature from outside to inside, closing the door behind me, hearing the door close with what I normally do, feeling the change from the ground of the metal to the raised tile, to then going to the left into my office, moving my green screen so that I can get to my office chair, sitting in my office chair, looking at the screen. First thing I see is my forecasted revenue, and it's double what it is now. So I have not been able to hit this one mark, and I'm not going to share where, like on the screen, like where I'm at, but it's up there. I have not been able to get past this one milestone, not double, but it's a significant number, okay? Let's just say it's going from 2 to 3, okay? And it's like right at the cusp, and every time it would get to 3, like it'd be like let's just say 2.91 or 2.94, and then it'd go down, and then it'd go up, and then it'd go down, and then it'd go up. And I'm like, you son of a... So I started visualizing it double what it is now. And just this last week, hit past that milestone. Hit past that 3 that I was trying to get to. Didn't do anything different. It literally was... What happens is your brain, what Maxwell Maltz calls it, your servo mechanism. It's like a missile. The way that missiles work is when when a missile's launched to hit something, it doesn't go in a straight line. It's constantly recalculating where it's at, like constant. But the missile knows the target. It's right over here. So as long as it keeps on correcting its course to get to that target, boom, it'll hit. And if you look at air to ground missiles launched from like jets, you can actually see the smoke, the curvature of the smoke as it's doing. Yeah, and so that ground target's not moving, but that missile still has to like figure out, boom, and when it hits, it's only because of those changes. That's what happens with your brain. You visualize where you're at, just like when you were visualizing yourself on the podium. Your brain's like, oh, that's where we should be. Like that's our normal spot. Like that's where. So how do I get? Your brain will automatically figure out how you're going to get to there. It's so crazy how it works, but it works. Like as you're practicing and stuff, you're subconsciously doing this. As you're practicing, your brain is thinking, okay, this is important, this is not important, this is important, this is not important. And to the point where you get to the competition and you see your competitors and your brain's like, oh, that guy, we're going to be doing this. That guy, we're going to do this. And it's nuts. And then boom, you're on the podium. And that's what happened with this, is that to go from that 2 to 3, I had no idea how to get there. I just wanted to get there. And my brain's like, oh, we'll just do this thing over here, last month. And that thing last month is what caused the ability for other things to happen to where I could get past that milestone. It's so nuts, but it totally 100% works.